Hi everyone. I'm Helen from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you the Cozy Critters puppy version. It's divided into two parts, the main part and the decorations. First, crochet the main part. Once completed, make the decorations and attach them. Let's start crocheting the main part. Begin with a chain stitch, then crochet in rounds for a section. After that, work back and forth. Let's take a look at the chart. In the chart, R plus number indicates the round number. H plus number indicates the row number. The increases and decreases explanation column shows the stitch techniques needed when crocheting the current round. It also explains any increasing or decreasing. The total stitches column shows the total number of stitches. After completing all stitches in the current round, the stitches used include chain, CHF double crochet, FB double crochet increase, and slip stitch. Next, watch me demonstrate the specific crocheting method. The yarn used for the main part here is special. This yarn has longer fibers. It's hard to see the stitches clearly when crocheting. I'll first demonstrate the crocheting method using cotton yarn. Then I'll explain the using the corresponding yarn. You can learn the method first, or practice with yarn that's easier to watch. After learning, use the corresponding yarn for crocheting. Also, the yarn color here is random. For specific yarn, color scheme and hook size, refer to the detail page of our product and paper instructions. First, cast on. The chart shows 3CH, indicating the cast on method is chain cast on. Then cast on 3 stitches. Let's start with chain cast on. Pick up the yarn with your right hand. Wrap it around your left little finger once. Pass through between middle finger and index finger. Pinch the yarn tail with your left middle finger and thumb. Pick up the crochet hook with your right hand. The hook moves between these 2 points. Position the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Then position the hook to the left side of the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. Pull the yarn through the loop. Tighten the yarn tail. Note: keep the loops on the hook slightly loose for easier crocheting later. This slip knot does not count as a stitch. You can also begin with a slip knot method. Cross the yarn tails. Then from underneath the loop, pull the yarn tail through. Then place the slip knot loop onto the crochet hook. Adjust slightly. Hang the yarn with your left hand using the previous method. Now begin crocheting chain stitches. Yarn over. Pull through. 1 chain stitch is done. On this chain stitch, pick up the V-shaped loop side. Pick up both strands of the chain stitch. Place a stitch marker to mark. Continue yarn over. Pull through. This is the second stitch. You need to crochet 3 stitches here in total. Crochet 1 more stitch. The starting chain is now completed. 1 chain on the hook represents 1 stitch. The loop on the hook is not counted in the stitch count. The starting chain explanation is finished. Begin the first round. R1 is dow 3, 1 2 F, which means starting from the third chain from the end. The number before F indicates how many double crochets to make. Here it means to crochet 12 double crochets. First locate the third chain from the end, which is actually the first chain of the starting chain. Verify by counting from right to left. 1, 2, 3. It's still this chain stitch. So we insert the hook into the chain space marked by the stitch marker. Work 1 double crochet. First the yarn loop on the hook, which means picking up this braid. Place a stitch marker to mark it. Pay attention not to include the working yarn when placing the marker. Then yarn over once. Insert into the corresponding position. Yarn over and draw through. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops, leaving 2 loops. Continue yarn over and draw through in once. The double crochet is completed. This is the marker spot. The V-shaped loop is the stitch of the double crochet. 1 stitch represents 1 stitch. Continue to pick up the same position. Work 11 double crochets. I'll demonstrate the technique for double crochet again. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Repeat twice. Once. Twice. Complete the double crochet. Continue with 10 double crochets. One stitch. Two stitches. Three stitches. Nine stitches. 10 stitches, plus the previous 2 stitches. Completed 12 stitches in total. Check the stitch count after finishing. The stitch pattern corresponding to the chart is now complete. You can remove the stitch marker at the insertion point. Finally, at the stitch of the first double crochet, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert the hook. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook in one go. Complete the slip stitch. The braid on the upper right is the chain formed by the slip stitch. The slip stitch doesn't count as one stitch. You need to tighten its braid, which means pull tight the loop on the hook. This makes the right side braid smaller. The slip stitch is not indicated in the form, but when crocheting in rounds, you always finish by joining with a slip stitch and pull tight. Leave the starting yarn tail unfastened for now. It can be used to distinguish the right side from the wrong side. The side with the starting yarn tail is the wrong side of the fabric, and the stitch texture is relatively blurry. The opposite side is the right side. Now the first round is complete. Next, crochet round 2. R2 is 2CH1 2DC2 in 1. DC2 in 1 means double crochet increase. The number before it indicates how many double crochet increases to make. Here it means to crochet 12 double crochet increases. Continue with the yarn from the previous round. First, make 2 chain stitches as beginning chain, 1, 2. Here the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch, not included in the total stitch count. Then place a stitch marker on the entire loop on the hook. So after completing the corresponding stitches, the marker position will exactly be at the stitch position of one corresponding stitch. Work down to the marker position of the previous round, where you previously joined with a slip stitch. Make a double crochet 2 in 1, which means work 2 double crochets in the same position. One stitch. At this point the stitch marker marks its stitch position. Continue with 2 stitches. Complete the double crochet increase. Here you can remove the stitch marker. Continue picking up the left stitch afterward. Work double crochet 2 in 1. After completing, you'll need to work 10 more double crochet increases downward. Work each stitch by pulling through 2 double crochets. Complete the last double crochet increase. Check the stitch count. Note that the turning chain doesn't count as one stitch. The total stitches for each round are indicated in the corresponding chart. I won't mention this again afterward. Finally, at the marked position, work 1 slip stitch to join. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. Pull through all loops on the hook. Complete the slip stitch. Tighten the braid as well. The second round is complete. Work round 3 next. Make 2 chains as beginning chain. The following chart is FFV X12. The parentheses here indicate a group. The multiplier indicates the number of times to repeat the pattern. Work 1 double crochet. Pay attention to marking before crocheting. Pick up loops and mark before working the first stitch. I won't remind you repeatedly afterward. Insert into the marked stitch of the previous round and crochet accordingly. Remove the stitch marker after completing it. Work 1 double crochet 2 in 1 next. FFV is completed. Let me demonstrate again. Work 1 double crochet first. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. This is the second time. Repeat FFV 10 more times afterward. Always work 1 double crochet, followed by 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Finally pick up the marked position, and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete at this point. Now work the fourth round. Chain 2 to begin. Work the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work 1 double crochet. Then work 1 double crochet 2 in 1. Followed by 1 double crochet. FFV F is completed. I'll demonstrate again. 1 double crochet. 1 double crochet 2 in 1. 1 double crochet. This is the second time. Then continue repeating the stitch pattern inside the parentheses. Work the required number of times to complete. After finishing all, join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The fourth round is completed. Move on to the fifth round. Work even for this round. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Then pick up the stitch corresponding to one stitch to another and work double crochet. Check the stitch count after completing, with the same stitch count as the previous round. Then pick up the marker position, and join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The 5th round is completed. For the remaining part afterward, work back and forth, meaning the ending doesn't need to join with a slip stitch at the beginning. Continue the previous numbering sequence downward. Next we'll be working the 6th row. Chain 2 as beginning chain. Here the beginning chain corresponds to the previous round's beginning chain. The chart shows turn, indicating the fabric needs to be turned. Turn counterclockwise. Then pick up stitches to the left. Work the corresponding amount of double crochets. Continue all the way down to the position before the previous round's beginning chain, which is the position marked by the stitch marker. Complete the marked position. At this point the row is finished. No slip stitch join is needed. This creates an opening at the beginning and end. Row 6 is complete. The stitch marker can be removed here. Now work row 7. Using the same method, start with 2 chain stitches as beginning chain. Then turn the fabric. Starting from the first stitch on the edge going downward, work a double crochet into each stitch in sequence. Continue all the way to the position next to the previous row's beginning chain, right before the opening. When reaching the previous row's beginning chain, no need to crochet. The stitch count for this row is identical to the previous row. Now row 7 is completed. For the remaining rows, continue crocheting using the same method as row 7. Simply complete the required number of rows. When counting row numbers or round numbers here, count each raised texture one by one. Each raised texture represents one round or one row. The swatch now has 7 raised textures. When encountering insufficient yarn while crocheting, you can work an incomplete stitch to join the yarn here. I'll demonstrate the method using the swatch. Everyone please pay attention. Always join the yarn on a double crochet. First work an incomplete double crochet. Yarn over once on the hook. Insert the hook. Yarn over and pull through. Then yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. There are still 2 loops left on the hook. This is an incomplete double crochet. Then pick up the new yarn. Leave a little yarn tail. Yarn over and pull through. The double crochet is completed, and the yarn joining is also done. Tie a knot to secure both yarn tails on the wrong side of the fabric. Leave the yarn tails on the wrong side for now. Continue crocheting downward normally. This is the method for joining yarn. For the remaining parts, refer to the pattern to crochet. After completing all crocheting, break the yarn. Here I'll demonstrate the method. First secure with a chain stitch. Leave a little yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Hide the yarn tail to the wrong side of the fabric, which is the side with the starting yarn tail. Follow the texture of the fabric to weave in. You can weave in a few more stitches. All yarn tails should be handled using the same method. Simply hide them inside the fabric. Complete this part on your own. At this point, the crocheting method for the main part is explained. Moving forward, I'll use the original yarn to explain things to pay attention to during the crocheting process. First is casting on. The yarn here is hard to see. Pay attention while crocheting. Crochet slower. First follow the method demonstrated with cotton yarn. Chain cast on. Then make 3 chains. After completing the first chain, you can feel it. The loop underneath the hook is the first chain stitch. Touch it with your hand and you'll feel a small hole. Place a stitch marker on the first stitch as well. We'll place it directly into the hole. Continue crocheting chain stitches. 2 stitches. 3 stitches. Let's touch the chain stitches again. When touching continuously, there's a bump between every 2 chain stitches. The indented hole is where the chain stitch is. Now the casting on is completed. Next, insert the hook into the first chain stitch hole. Crochet 12 double crochets. Since it's hard to find the stitches later, mark each stitch here. First place a stitch marker on the loop on your hook. Clip in a stitch marker. To easily distinguish the marker spot, on our first marker, clip another stitch marker. So the stitch position with 2 stitch markers is the first stitch. Pick down to the chain stitch marker spot. Work 1 double crochet. As you crochet, feel and work slowly. Crochet slowly. Yarn over. Insert. Yarn over and pull through. If you want it looser, enlarge the loop. Conversely, pull the yarn shorter. Check or feel it. 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and draw through the first 2 loops. Two loops remaining. Yarn over and draw through in once. This completes 1 double crochet. The stitch marker marks this position. Which is the stitch of this double crochet? Feel the marked spot with your hands. It's a small dent. The lower left side is awkward lumps. This is the post of the double crochet. The upper right side is softer. This is the double crochet stitch. Place a stitch marker on the loop on the hook. Then at the same insertion point, work 1 double crochet. Before crocheting each subsequent stitch, Pick up the entire loop to place a stitch marker on the hook. The second marker position is the stitch of the second double crochet. Continue to complete the remaining stitches. Now there are 3 stitch markers, meaning 3 stitches have been worked. After completing, check the stitch count. Simply count the number of stitch markers here. The position of the 2 markers is the first stitch. Then remove the stitch marker from the previous insertion point. At this point the chart stitch pattern is completed. Move down to the position with 2 stitch markers. Join with a slip stitch. Insert into the hole of the stitch marker. Insert the hook and crochet. After completing, pull tight as well. At this point the first round is complete. To make it convenient for checking the round count later, place a stitch marker in any one stitch on this side. Continue with round 2. First make 2 chain stitches as beginning chain. Then at the position below with 2 stitch markers. Work double crochet 2 in 1. This round still requires marking every stitch. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Crochet correspondingly. Finish crocheting the corresponding position of the stitch marker. The stitch marker below can be removed. Pick up the stitch marker positions from the previous round below. Work double crochet 2 in 1 evenly. When reaching the position with 2 stitch markers, check the stitch count at this point. The stitch count in the chart is completed. Then at the first stitch, join with a slip stitch at the position of the 2 stitch markers. Pull tight. This completes round 2. Similarly, mark any one stitch in this round. You can feel it here. Mark one stitch above the marked position from the previous round. Convenient for later checking. The following round 3 uses the same method. After completing the beginning chain, follow the chart to crochet the corresponding stitch patterns. Place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch position. Place 1 stitch marker after each stitch thereafter. Work to the corresponding stitch position below. Remove the stitch markers after completing. Once you're more comfortable with crocheting, you don't need to mark every stitch. For example, mark every 3 stitches, or mark every 5 stitches. Here I'll demonstrate round 3, using the method of marking every 5 stitches. First make the beginning chain. Then work 4 stitches following the chart. Still place 2 stitch markers at the first stitch. Now 4 stitches are completed. Mark the position of the 5th stitch below. Continue using the same method. Pay attention that the stitch just completed is the 5th stitch position. Work 4 stitches forward from this stitch. Mark the next stitch after completing. Left side of the previous stitch marker. up to the current stitch marker position. That's 5 stitches. You can also feel it or part the fibers. You'll see a general braid pattern. Continue crocheting using this method. And if the previously completed stitch pattern is unclear what stitch was worked, you can feel it. There's only one strand that feels firm, which is a stitch post, meaning one stitch was worked. Below in a chain space, pulling through to create 2 stitch posts, that's an increase. After completing the last stitch marker of the previous round, remove the stitch marker, moving down to the first stitch's 2 stitch marker positions. Now check the stitch count. Starting from the second stitch marker on the left side, there are 5 stitches between stitch markers. Let's count the number of stitch markers. There are 7 stitch markers here, meaning up to this stitch marker position, there are a total of 35 stitches. Plus the last stitch worked, making 36 stitches in total, matching the stitch count on the chart. Finally at the 2 stitch marker positions. Which is the first stitch? Join with a slip stitch. Pull tight. The third round is complete. Mark each round after completing it. Similarly, mark above the previously marked positions. If stitch markers run out later, use other colors for marking. Cut a piece of yarn. Then from the position needing marking, pick up approximately corresponding stitch. Draw the yarn through. Tie a knot with the yarn tail. This is the method of marking with yarn tails. For the fourth round afterward, you can crochet following the marking method of the third round. If you really can't find the exact position, we can work within a certain area. Crochet the corresponding number of stitches. Slight deviation in insertion position within the corresponding area is okay. Here I'll demonstrate the method using the fourth round. Start with a beginning chain. In the previous round, there are 5 stitches between my stitch markers. So I just need to insert the hook into 5 positions between them. Refer to the chart for the stitch pattern. Complete this area first. While crocheting this round, still mark every 3 or 5 stitches. I'll continue marking every 5 stitches. Work 1 double crochet. The first stitch here always needs to be marked. And use 2 stitch markers to separate. Crochet 1 double crochet 2 in 1 downward. Insert the hook into the small hole here. Pay attention to the small hole near the fabric edge. Part the fibers to take a look. You can faintly see a braid-like texture. Continue crocheting 1 double crochet downward. Then mark it. Crochet 1 double crochet in the adjacent stitch. When reaching the stitch marker position later, here, make a double crochet increase. In this end area, pick 5 stitch positions to insert the hook. Then repeat this process. Continue crocheting. Insert the hook into the corresponding small hole. When counting stitches, you can also check by feeling the small hole. Take it slow while crocheting. The insertion point can also be roughly corresponding. Finish the corresponding number of stitches. Now we've reached the starting position. Let's check the stitch count. If you made a mistake in the stitch technique while crocheting, it's okay, as long as the total stitches match the required number. Make a slip stitch at the beginning position. Pull tight. The fourth round is done. Once you get more comfortable with crocheting, you can also feel it. The fabric will have a bumpy texture. The raised parts that feel firm represent one round. The dents are the holes. We can also count the holes. One hole represents one round. Since everyone's tension varies, after completing the fourth round, compare the dimensions with the chart. If the size differs significantly, it's recommended to adjust your tension and recrochet. Moving on to the fifth round. Work even without increasing or decreasing. The stitch markers positions of the upper and lower rounds will correspond exactly. Then follow the back and forth flat crocheting method. All rounds are worked even without increases or decreases. You can mark the first stitch of every row and every round. When crocheting back and forth, end at the first marked stitch of the previous row, indicating the end of a row. If the yarn runs out while crocheting, you can join yarn using incomplete stitches. The method is identical to the cotton yarn demonstration. Finally, fasten off the yarn after completing the work, and hide all yarn tails to the wrong side of the fabric. This concludes the crocheting method for the original yarn. At this point, the main part has been fully explained.